Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. We'll get started very, very shortly. Just giving everybody one more minute to get into the room.
Good morning. This is Rhonda.
Hi, Rhonda. Hi, Peter. Good morning. Hi, Amy. So good to see you. Hi, Emily.
Morning. Let's try that again without being on mute.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So good to see everybody this morning. We'll get started in about 30 seconds. Hi, Lee.
Hello.
We have a creative Lee, and then we also have another
Ah,
Lee.
yeah, I was saying yesterday during class, one of the boys changed his name to The Boy instead of his name, which is Kalel. And I said, that's funny. So then I changed mine to Creatively. So that's why I didn't realize it was still up there. But
Yeah, no, it's totally okay. I love it, actually. So welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you all could join us this morning. We're going to take some time just to discuss maximizing our YAI budget. We are so fortunate that we actually have Peter from Wallace here. We also have Lee here, who, along with Danielle, actually offered some office hours to go over specific budgets last week, and I think on Monday as well. So we're going to get into it. We do have just a few announcements of how we'll just kind of run our time today. But before we get into that, let's just do a quick go round of what's your name, what do you want us to call you, where you're calling from, and what is your favorite form of creative expression. So I'll just model. I'm Patrice. I'm calling right now from the Metro Atlanta area, and I am a part of the Seraphoma Collective and an HTI Catalyst. So, and my favorite form of expression is dance. I love to move to any type of music. What about you creatively? Could you start us off?
I sure can. My name is Lee Alfredson. I'm at the East Altamont branch, which is one of the suburbs of Orlando. And my favorite art form is street painting, which is pastel murals on the ground. I've been a professional street painter for 25 years, and I chalk for Disney when I'm not at the Boys and Girls Club.
I love that. Emily?
Sure. My name's Emily Carter, and I'm in Metro Atlanta and with the Boys and Girls Club here. And during COVID and quarantine, I have recently gotten into embroidery. So that's my new favorite thing right now, which is nice. It's sewing, but also painting by numbers at the same time. So I like it.
Love it. What about you, Peter?
Well, I'm Peter. I'm from New York City. And I'm going to follow Emily's lead and say that this didn't really speak to me before, but during COVID, I'm trying to work down a list of the 100 greatest movies in American cinema.
Okay.
And so I'm really, I'm getting into cinema a little bit now.
I love that. Love it. What has been your favorite so far?
Oh man, see a lot of my favorites I've already seen. I can tell you what my least favorite is on the top 100 movies was Taxi Driver. I do not understand why that is on the top 100. That is a weird, not enjoyable film at all. I guess Robert De Niro. I don't know. Maybe it was all that in the 1970s, but that is one weird flick.
Thanks.
I can think of 200 movies that I would put above that one, but I got to go with the list from IMDb.
Okay, love it. Anna?
My name is Anna Benson. I also work for the Boys and Girls Club of Central Florida, and I live in Altamont, Lee.
Hey.
Being a numbers person, I'm not as creative as I used to be. I do have a lot of children who picked up the creative bug, but I've always liked to sew, and I love to sing at church, so that's my biggest thing.
Okay, I love that. I see Rebecca has joined. What about you, Rebecca? What's your favorite form of creative expression?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So my art form is fibers, so beadwork and fabrics and things like that. But I have found a lot of creative expression lately through graphic design, which has been really fun. So that's something new.
Very interesting. Amy, could we hear you?
Yeah, hey everyone. This is Amy coming from the Boys and Girls Club of the Tennessee Valley. And my favorite form of creative expression is, I think it's a tie between writing and drawing.
Love it. Love it. And Lee Shepherd.
Hi, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, great.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Lee Shepherd from Atlanta, and my form of creative expression is like Amy's, drawing and writing.
Yeah, I love that. And so definitely feel free to doodle. We'll need to hear your voice more throughout our workshop and our session today. Thank you all so much for sharing. I can't wait to talk to Lee Creative more about that street art and chalking for Disney. That sounds so fun.
Thank you.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, we'll move right along. So today's agenda is really around our program, our people, and our process. We really want to make sure that you have the ability when you leave here to leave with one real game changer idea that's going to help you leverage your people, your program, and your process to really maximize your YAI budget for now and for the future. And just a reminder that we do need your voice. We are going to have an opportunity for you all to ask questions, give answers, and also get answers. But we do need your voice, so feel free to use the chat at any time. We are recording this session and we'll send it out to you. And we do have some resources for you at the end of the workshop. And so right now, I just want to kind of give an opportunity to Peter. He's going to talk a little bit about him, a little bit about his story, and the program and Wallace's response.
Actually, I'm going to focus almost exclusively on Wallace's response, just to keep this focused on budgets. And I just want to congratulate those of you who did join this session. I know Dr. Berry is in another session. Lee and I have been in this situation before where we're out here trying to talk about something important and Dr. Berry's in the next room, but at least we can't hear them laughing right now. So we can stay really focused on what's important here with the budgets. You know, what I want to say is that if you've been through the budgeting process with BGCA and Wallace, you know, we're generally pretty flexible, and that was one of the design elements of Wave 2, was not to assign specific tasks and specific budget limits. You almost never hear us say something like a culminating event ought to cost this much, you know, put this much money in for your culminating event or this much per person. We really want you to budget your program the way that you would budget if you were doing it on your own, and we're here to help so we can move things forward and move things a little bit faster. And when requests have come in, for us, it's always come back to the strategy, which is it in service of high quality arts? Does it help advance the learning? Is it aligned with your model? We ask these very simple questions, and if the answers are yes, we just say yes, because that's what the whole initiative was designed to do. So now we're in this horrible pandemic, and everything has changed, and folks are wondering, what does this mean in terms of budgets and the finances? Bahia is going to talk a little bit about Wallace's ongoing commitment to the work, so I don't want to be redundant with her. But when it comes to the budget, it really is the same framework. We want to show a lot of flexibility around deliverables, around your ability to take the same kind of improvisational action to move money that was designated for one thing to something else. And you can ask the same questions that Lee and Bahia and I do, which is, if you have a pool of money that was allocated to something that's no longer happening because of COVID-19 and the club shutdowns and the shifts in programming, but you want to spend it somewhere else, it's the same questions. Is it in service of high quality arts? Will it help us learn something about a model to serve young people, whether it's through remote programming or in person or some kind of a hybrid? Is there, are we spending that money in a way that is on the one hand responsible, but on the other hand, is it trying to break some new ground? Is it in service of your model and the way you want to service kids, and that we might learn something from it? And if so, the answer is yes. It's good to keep us informed, but you have really a lot of latitude to move things around. And in terms of what's going to happen at the end of the year, we can talk about that. What we don't do is we don't say, well, you underspent your budget this year by 20,000, so take 20,000 off next year's budget. We're not going to apply what happened this year, which is a really unusual and exceptional year, to next year. If you underspend this year, and then you get into next year's budget and you say, we have to rebuild. We lost some people and we need to go out and hire new ones. So last year's was lower than normal, but next year's is going to be higher than normal. Just bring that to us. And I don't foresee any issues with that. So I think I want to wrap up there because I want to leave enough for your specific questions. And if Lee wants to jump in with some of this, but in general, I think the message we want you to hear is we are still committed to the outcomes. We're still committed to the initiative. We're committed to learning. We may not learn the things that we set out to learn because the questions shifted a little bit and the modalities of delivery are shifting. But the overarching goals haven't really changed, just the way we're going to get to them have shifted. And so we're going to show as much flexibility as we reasonably can. RFA is doing the same thing. And all of our discussions with research have been along the lines that we may not learn the things we were setting out to learn, but we're still going to learn a lot. And what we learn is going to be helpful to the clubs on a local level and to the field in a broad and general sense. So that's the framework under which we operate. And Lee, I don't know if you wanted to add on to any of that or give the BGCA angle on it. And if not, we can go right to questions and any comments that folks have about their particular situations.
Yeah, I think we've been communicating the same message, have had a couple of office hours over the past few days, and really just looking at helping clubs identify what are those areas that are not going to be spent down this year, and what are intentional ways that those funds could be reallocated that are still in support of the original kind of intent of the initiative. So I think we can turn it over to questions, but also just want to reiterate that from the BGCA side, we're here to support and provide guidance as you all are working through what might be new and different ways to allocate your funding to support your youth and support your staff.
So we'll open it up for questions at this time. I didn't get any questions in the chat, but if you have a specific question that Peter or Lee could answer, feel free to lift that up.
Yeah, so I have a question for the entire group. This year has given us an opportunity to think about our program differently. And one of the things that we've noticed or we've seen is in our program right now, we're contracting with the Alliance. We have professionals that are coming in and that are delivering the program, and we're wondering if it would be better if we maximized our budget by, now that we've learned these best practices from the Wallace, or not Wallace, from the Alliance, I was looking at y'all, from the Alliance, if we could then execute the programs in our clubs. And I was wondering if anybody else on the call has done something similar, and if you've seen that as a positive approach to maximize your budget while still maintaining the quality of the program.
I'll just jump in really quickly and say congratulations on the great ink you got in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. There was a great article about your partnership. Was that either this week or last week, I think?
Yeah, thank you.
Lee might be better to speak about what, because she has a kind of a wider aperture on what's happening in clubs, either in YAI or not. I'd say from a budget perspective and with the strategy, looking at it with the strategy lens, the strong interest in having Metro Atlanta as part of the pilot was to explore what was learned through a partnership. You were able to get a lot of artists on board quickly because you didn't have to hire them and find them. You went right to contract with Alliance and brought them in, and they were ready to go, and they already had an experience with the kids. And if one of the things you learned through that is that it need not be a permanent solution, but there's some knowledge transfer as to what works and what doesn't, and you want to kind of take that in another direction, that's a learning. And frankly, I think, from my, I'm just speaking for me, I think one of the questions we always had about Atlanta is a partnership with Alliance a permanent or scalable solution? Like if it's a big hit and it works, how do you make it bigger? And how do you expand to other art forms? They only do one thing, and it was kind of a big ticket item. Yeah. So I think, I don't know if anyone else is doing it. We could speak to that more than I could, but I would say from our perspective, in terms of what have we learned, that's what we really want to capture. And it sounds like you're learning that it was a success in some ways, and in other ways you're ready to run it on your own or take it in another direction, and how you came to that decision and what you hope to achieve and what you're taking with you, and where it came up short, if it did come up short, would be great insights for the community and then for the field.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and Emily, I'll just chime in. I think you all had your partnership was a bigger partnership than what we're seeing in other clubs in the cohort who might be supplementing their YAI program with smaller, sometimes multiple partnerships with other arts organizations. But I think what we are seeing is that due to the fact that we're midway through the initiative, and also because of COVID, we are seeing a common theme across the cohort of clubs re-examining their program and really identifying, okay, this is working and this is going to continue on, and then where is it we need to pivot or make adjustments. And I think for you all, and we've talked about this before, is there was value in that partnership in terms of accelerating the program on the front end, but then really looking at how to sustain and scale the model as we move into the latter half of the initiative.
Okay. Great. Thank you for the feedback.
Does anyone else have a specific question about their program? How you're pivoting, any ideas that you need on strategizing for the latter half?
But Patricia, I have a comment. This is creatively. We have not put this into play yet, but we are going to be switching at the club. So the teachers like myself and Abby at the Disney Clubhouse in Pine Hills, closer to downtown Orlando, and one of the other teachers are going to be teaching. So in other words, my specialty is street painting. her specialty is sculpting. So instead of bringing in a person, we will be transferring over to the other club to teach. So I will take her class one day and teach all her kids street painting, where she'll come over to my club and teach sculpting. So that's kind of a neat way. And then of course, budgeting wise, then it's just materials and not bringing somebody else in. But we're kind of excited about that coming up in the new year. Hopefully we'll be able to put that in place quickly. So.
That's a great strategy. Thank you for lifting that up.
Sure.
Has anyone else found a strategy that has worked really well, especially in COVID, that they think that they may actually use to streamline their process?
I actually have a question for creatively in regard to what you just said. So when you're talking about having materials available at the different clubs for the different art practices, are you meaning like being able to have all art practice supplies available at all clubs, so there's not a lot of moving back and forth? Is that what you were saying?
Well, I think that what would end up happening, and we have not done this yet, we want to do this and we're planning on doing it for the summer, but now we're a little bit on hold as far as what that's going to look like, especially since they're talking about our clubs being much smaller than they would have been previous to COVID. But what will probably happen, especially when we're talking about chalk art and sculpting, being that I'm a professional chalk artist, I have a lot of supplies, but it would probably not be a situation where each club would have those materials, but the visiting artist would bring them with them. So that's what we talked about. So Abby would be bringing any sculpting materials with her, so that then I would not have to order those through my budget. And again, this is something that we're talking about doing and definitely want to do it, but we haven't put every step into place. But the way that I visualize it is it's a whole lot easier for me to get the materials that I know we need and take them to another club. So how that's going to work in budgeting, I guess I'll be working with Anna Benson on that, I guess.
Thanks,
So
Lee.
creatively, and Anna, have you all, and maybe others in the cohort, how have you all been approaching summer program planning and fall program planning in as your YAI team in a different way due to COVID, like in terms of budgeting and planning what supplies you're going to be purchasing and how you're going to be planning for your programming, given that there's been more of a shift to the virtual programming? Have you all developed a new approach or process to how to plan your programming and your program budget for these coming sessions?
Well, on the finance side, we've been in seemed like daily discussions, but our focus is overall agency. You know, we have a plan to reopen the clubs with more staff and fewer children, so we can adhere to the CDC guidelines for space and the ratio of 1 to 9 children, so we don't have more than 10 in a group. So our focus has been more of a general, how are we going to do this? What's it going to look like? Are we going to have enough staff? Do we have qualified staff? That type of thing. As far as YAI, unfortunately, because of the way we're structured, we have so many creative people that I'm just kind of the numbers person that plugs in. But I welcome getting involved and giving those opinions that I might have from what I've experienced with other grants we have as far as programming. But I know there'll be no break or decline in the ability to purchase the items that we need, that the continuity will continue. It just will be on a smaller scale. So I've not actually sat down and had specific discussions regarding YAI, but I know that'll happen in the near future.
And this is creatively, we have a huge meeting, YAI meeting on Friday. So I'm sure that is going to let us know where we're going from here, what it's going to look like in the club, and then there will be a little bit more planning. But Lee, I don't think at this point I'm very organized. So of course I've got ideas of what I'm going to do over the summer, but as far as and in the fall, but as far as budgeting and that type of thing, I'm relatively new. I haven't been at the club quite a year yet. It'll be a year in September. So I'm not real familiar with how the budgeting goes. I just know that I put in what I need for materials, and for the most part, it's accepted. So I'm a little bit out of the loop as far as that goes.
Yeah, I'm sure that all of the clubs are having some, you know, big soul searching meetings about what the model is going forward. If the model was based on bringing a lot of kids in the doors and now they can't or won't come in, it changes this. And there's no way that when we were spending a year planning this work, we could have ever, and if we did, it would have been dismissed as ridiculous that this is the world we'd be living in right now. But as you do work through the ideas, and if the questions come up, is this allowable? Can we do that? We just want you to know that if it is in service of high quality arts based on the 10 principles or some adaptation of those principles, and you are serving kids in a way that meets them where they are, and it's something that you feel meets their needs and works with the health and safety framework of your clubs, we don't have any issues with it. I think where we kind of draw the line is if we reverted back to something that didn't represent high quality arts, you know, and even there we'd have some flexibility. So if you just said, look, we can't do this right now, this is what we can do, talk to us about it. We want to get everyone back on track. It's supposed to be an initiative around high quality arts and what we can learn. So I don't think what we want to do is just say, we can't do YAI, but we can do the arts and crafts we were doing 5 years ago. That's a little bit harder to support, but under emergency situations, if it were temporary, we'd be open to it. I think as long as we are getting back on track with high quality arts, and whatever that means, if we have to switch the modalities, if we built up studios to do one form of art and that doesn't work remotely, so we're shifting over to another, and that requires a whole new set of supplies that weren't budgeted, all of that can be worked through with us. There's really nothing that we would flat out reject as long as it's in service of our project goals. So as you have those meetings, just know that we stand behind you with a lot of flexibility around how the money is spent, as long as it's on strategy.
Peter, I actually have a question from what you said. So one of the things that I noticed with the other clubs is, so we have YI at 5 of our club sites, but I know that there are other clubs that are lacking in the art department, and I feel like right now it's a lot more noticeable just because the kids have been spending so much time at the clubs, and so all the clubs are looking for things to do. And so I was wondering, like, in terms of like, would we be able to use some funds to help some of those clubs get you know, basic art supplies so that they are able to do you know, their part-time arts and crafts staff are able to do those things? Because I know one of the things we thought about was kind of sending them some more like high quality activities that they would be able to do with those supplies, even though our staff wouldn't actually implement those classes, but we would help them figure out how to use those materials better. Would that be an option?
I think that's something we would look at, you know, when things get a little more back on track. Ultimately, we're going to look at what the costs were to run the program and what the outcomes were from the program. So if that were to become a big part, like if you were to take the funding from Wallace and divert a quarter of it or a third of it, that becomes problematic, because then there's no relationship between how or where the money was spent and the outcomes that we're studying, which would only be in the YAI clubs. But if you're talking about a couple of $100 or even up to a couple of $1,000s in your overall budget, I don't think that really throws anything off. And I think we want to be able, you have kids out there with no arts at all, and you have some extra in your budget and you want to put that towards supplies. I don't have an issue with that. I just think we should track it so that if and when they ultimately come, RFA comes back and starts doing the budget study, we would at least know that some amount of money that was kind of not spent in the club, it was spent outside the club. Lee, would you take the same perspective, or would you see that differently? I mean, I don't have an issue with that if we're talking about a relatively small amount.
No, I don't have an issue with it. And I think my question would be, Amy, with the design of your program and with the Infuse Center being an arts hub, if there was a way to even be more intentional in that so that it becomes a recruitment approach to draw more young artists into your arts center at Vestal. And correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm giving the wrong site name, but I think there could be an opportunity for it to actually really support the intent of your program.
She's always thinking. I like that. Thank you, Lee. I'm like heads down on the budget, and you're like, big picture here, Rogovin, big picture.
I think that's a great idea and really helpful. And going back to what Peter was saying, yes, it really just smaller amounts. We're talking like pretty basic supplies, and not to every single club, but just ones that I know that their club directors have brought it to my attention. And I think that it would be great to kind of use it as a recruiting tool or a try workshop incentive so that we could integrate tracking some of the outcomes and progress of how that supplies is used. I think I'm glad that you brought up the Infuse Center, because it's been in the back of my mind lately, because we can't transport right now. So like I'm kind of having to think about the model without that, and just thinking about that being a regular piece just like the other clubs are, because we can't bring kids to and from. But it is always helpful to be reminded that it won't always be that way. It's kind of hard to not get like stuck in like, this is the way things are right now and this is the way that they'll be. So I appreciate that, Lee.
And Amy, not to put you on the spot, but I do know you all have given a lot of thought to some new ways to reallocate your funds. And I don't know if you want to share any of some of the thinking that you all put into, taking funding that was going to go towards culminating events, for example, and looking at how that could go towards supplies for youth, for professional development. Again, don't mean to put you on the spot, but I just know that I think you all have done a really great job of really being intentional and thinking through how to maximize your budget.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I will share some of the ideas that we've come up with. I think two that kind of stand out that I think maybe could help others is one, we have looked at professional development, and especially now looking into working with people that we may not have been able to work with before. I mean, we could have, but didn't really think to, because now everything is over Zoom. And so it kind of opens this idea where like, oh, we don't have to have this person come in, and we can do a training with them over Zoom, which is really helpful. So trying to think about how we can incorporate more professional development in kind of smaller ways, which I think before wasn't a big thing that we were thinking about, and now it's something that I think about frequently. And then also, I know field trips were a big part of our program, especially in the summer. And so one of the things that we're doing is trying to figure out how we can have a field trip type experience at our clubs. So I've been talking with local art organizations and seeing, if I can get their artists to come in and do like small events so their kids are seeing a fresh face and they're doing a special activity in smaller groups. And so kind of having those be field trip like experiences or events when in place of us being able to go elsewhere.
Those are great ideas, Amy. And we're actually going to, I'm not sure if Rebecca was still on the line, but she had a thought a few weeks ago on one of our liaison calls about how to really be intentional about your budget and what you're purchasing now, really in support of what Lee just offered up in making sure that the things that you buy are going to benefit high quality arts programming. And Rebecca, I'm not sure if you remember your comment, but would you share it if you do?
Hey, yeah, I'm still here. I don't know that I remember my exact comment. Yeah. But my thoughts around this are that you have to be proactive and not reactive, right? Which I think speaks to a little bit of what Amy was saying earlier, which is you get caught up in the right now and you might lose sight of the this is maybe not forever, right? And so just thinking about how to really be proactive in thinking about what you're purchasing and thinking about the long term, right? Not not stocking up on something right now because it feels like, oh, we could use this in the future maybe, right? But really thinking intentionally about like, what are the things that last? What are the things that really support the overall goals of our program? Not just, oh, this might be something that we can use in the future. So just being really proactive about that.
Thank you, Rebecca. That was exactly your thought on that call.
Cool, good.
And you know, and then the flip side of that, which brings it back to the budgets and the flexibility, is don't feel the need to spend down the money while it's here because it's going to get clawed back if you don't spend it. I know for any of us who've worked in different organizations with budgets, it's, you know, use it or lose it is the saying, and that's not going to happen here. So in the event that you can think of something that fits in with Rebecca's framework, I'd say, yeah, by all means, you know, that's fine. Even if that wasn't part of your original budget, spend it that way. But if you're thinking, I'll have a better understanding of what we need a little bit later on, but I'm a little nervous that if I don't spend this money, it's going to get taken away. I can't speak for what happens to your organizations, but we're not going to take it away. We're not going to claw any unspent funds back. So, you know, use it with intentionality, like Rebecca said, or hold on to it until things become a little bit clearer and spend it later.
Yeah. That's so important to remember, because that use it or lose it mentality, guys. I mean, like, I've been there. I've been in clubs where you have a grant and you come to the end of the year and you go, oh crap, I need to spend $10,000. I'll go and buy a gajillion watercolor kits. And you've done like one watercolor class the whole year and you don't have a watercolor teacher. You know, I mean, like, I've been there, I've done that, and I know that it doesn't work well. And what we're so well positioned with Wallace Foundation is, like, you don't have to do that, right? This is about being intentional and really providing the best quality programming. And so you don't have to go and spend that $10,000 on something just to get rid of it and get it out of your budget. Like, really, it's so important to really hear that. Like, I know Peter said it over and over, but I just want to really make sure that you guys feel that really deep, because that goes against a lot of how we spend down our grant budget sometimes.
So we've been very fortunate to really have Peter be responsive to our questions, and also for Lee to really offer up ingenious ideas of how the Try It workshop, that idea to really recruit young people into YAI was just great. I did put it in the chat. We are going to actually send out some more resources, especially to the people, the finance folks on the line that can actually have access to maybe some scenarios. If you want to just kind of play around with numbers, we have created an Excel spreadsheet that you don't have to do any of the adding and the subtracting. You can just put the scenarios in there, worst case and best case. We'll send those out to your email immediately following this workshop. But right now, I'd like for everybody to just do a quick go round of any idea that they heard. Those ideas that Amy shared, I'm going to share with everybody that I know that's doing a high quality arts program, that may be a game changer for you and your organization. Could we start with Emily? And it could be your idea, actually, to really go and do some professional development on your own, since that's maybe your partnership may be winding down.
That, and then I'm also just thinking in quarantine and virtual programming and stuff like that, and I'm wondering what's our opportunity to mail program supplies to kids, or mail something, like, I don't know, like, I'm just kind of thinking through that, and if that would be a good use of our program budget, and like, could we do a virtual culminating event of everybody showing off their work, or I don't know. So I'm just kind of wheeling about stuff like that right now.
Amy has actually mailed kits to kids, so she may be someone really good to Amy Chico in Tennessee Valley, somebody really good to collaborate with on that.
Great.
Yeah, and also Central Florida has, they've sent home kits, but then had Zoom programs so that the youth have the actual supplies, and then there's the instructor online to help guide through the process. So I think those are certainly things we could follow up, and making those connections across the cohort for sharing those ideas.
That would be great. Thank you.
Beautiful. Creative Lee said that is exactly what they do. Anyone else want to share any game changer ideas for them?
This is Creative Lee. That is exactly what we did. When we knew that we were going to be going via Zoom, I went to my club and looked at all the materials that I had, put together a curriculum, and then we bagged up the supplies. We put together the curriculum, and then we bagged up the supplies, and the kids either came to the club to pick them up, or I have a couple kids that live near me, and I just dropped it on their doorstep to a couple of them. So they all have the supplies, and then when we start the session, we just let them know, these are the things you're gonna need today out of your bag, and then we go from there, and it has worked out really, really well.
I want to be a kid again.
Absolutely, Anna, I feel you.
I do want to say one more thing. I never thought about having somebody else teach the class on Zoom. I have a list of people I wanted to teach who are friends of mine who are different artists, like a paper artist and a sculptor, and I never even thought about having them teach on Zoom during all of this. So I'm kind of excited, and kind of odd that I didn't think that through, but excited to put that into place if we are still going to be doing virtual, because I don't know the answer to that. So
that's a great idea, and I just want to add in that as tough as the situation is, as teaching on Zoom becomes more normal, a lot of artists have networks that stretch across the country. And in the old model, an artist might say, oh, I've got this great friend in Los Angeles, but I don't have the budget to bring them here to teach. But now that we're all going on Zoom, your network of artists, no matter where they are just as accessible if they're next door or the next time zone or somewhere else. And so, the ability to bring in guest artists or specialists is really expanded. in a way, not in a way that we ever would have wished for, but now that Zoom is the new normal for a lot of us, it opens up some possibilities that we may not have considered before.
This is a little bit off topic a little bit, but we have not, we are having a meeting on Friday, and I have no idea what the Boys and Girls Club of America is doing, whether we're going virtual on June 1st. Does anybody know that?
Is this creatively?
Yes.
June 1st, we plan to open the clubs, but like, as I was speaking to earlier, because of the CDC guidelines regarding space, we're not going to have as many kids in the club as we did before, and our ratio will drop from 20 students to 1 staff to 1 to 9 because of the group of 10 restriction. So not as many kids will be able to be served, and we'll have more staff. So there certainly is a possibility to do both in-person and virtual classes continuing for at least until the school year.
Okay, that's awesome to hear, because my art room, and I don't need to get into this right now, but my art room is really small, and we've determined that I can only have 4 kids at a time, but that's for another conversation.
Yeah, it's been quite the struggle the past couple of months to try to figure out how to come back with something. You know, a lot of the kids have been affected as well as we have, and being able to reach them with quality programming, especially arts programming, is going to give them the outlet they need to deal with the emotions that have come up. So I think continuing with some type of virtual program as well as in person is imperative.
That's awesome. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you all so very much for lifting up your voice and joining us in our workshop today. We cannot wait